Over the course of this semester, this class has reviewed many different readings that have all intersected in one way or another. There is, though, an overlying theme that relates across the entire semester, which is the African American vernacular and how it should be treated in the realm of literacy and writing. There are three particular texts from the coursework that fall in line with the course theme and topics, as well as with each other more so than the others, and those are Lena Impadu's Gumbo Yaya Tapping Cultural Stories to Teach Composition, Jacqueline Jones Royster's When the First Voice You Hear Is Not Your Own, and Pandora's Box by Sutherland Smith. The co-curricular that I'm deciding to use for this assignment is from the DC Urban Debate League.
The co-curricular I chose to attend with the DC Urban Debate League shows a varying range of talent. There were novice debaters who were talking on the topic of reparations, but had little to no idea what they were discussing. I found out later that this was mainly because coaches had actually slipped their debaters pre-written speeches for their rounds. Thankfully, the rounds of veteran debaters were more skillful. There was clear control of literary terms and factual sources when arguing over standardized testing issues.
The first unit's framing was around writing as inquiry and reflection. Ampadu fits within this unit because she explains how the question of writing should be seen. On page 75, she notes, "A painful reminder jolted me into awareness. However, that not everyone in my field embraced linguistic tolerance when I was ridiculed during the class session by two African American students who vigorously denounced the non-standard dialect Ebonics, variously called Black English Vernacular BEV or African American Vernacular English AAVE. These students, who like me, were prepared to teach English, distanced themselves from what they perceived to be utter nonsense that denigrated African Americans. This causes her to reflect on Black English vernacular. Royster fits within the unit because she continuously is reflective over the concepts of how bi-dialectalism is brought about. It's important to note on page 32 when she says, "The concept of home training underscores the reality that point of view matters and that we must be trained to respect point of views other than our own." This poses inquiry about the viewpoints of others, reflective over what comes across as authentic in writing and language. Sutherland Smith is in line with the first unit because it's noted that the student is simply pursuing the writing task in a manner consistent with her educational background and broader cultural experience. Reflectively, this paper goes back and analyzes why there is plagiarism so often and narrows it down to the source. The DC Urban Debate League co-curricular is in line with the first unit because reflectively in the debate, the veteran debaters were able to analyze what happened in earlier rounds to determine their best method of attack and inquire on specific points of interest of their opponents that they raised during their arguments. The second unit focused on writing in different disciplines. Ampadu fit within this unit because she clearly explains the view of bi-dialectalism in the discipline of English. On page 76, when she states, "Only when language and literacy professionals learn to appreciate the linguistic differences among themselves and within their own local communities can they work to educate others about the diversity of languages, providing a strong, unified voice to influential public attitudes and policies towards language." Royster fits within this unit because on page 37, she is approached by a woman who states, "You weren't so formal. You didn't have to speak in an appropriated academic language. You sounded natural." In this quote, she is prompted, and Royster goes on to challenge what academic language can and should sound like. Sutherland Smith is within this unit because when on page 192 we read, "What we all saw as plagiarism, they clearly saw not only as legitimate, but correct and proper." We see that this is how the English community and all communities within written reports viewed as a writing tactical error. Within the discipline, plagiarism is seen as entirely wrong, but this article is challenging that idea. The co-curricular is within this unit because debating within the discipline of literacy is proven to be a very solid platform for young adults to present their ideas on a current world issue. The third unit deals with the ethicalities in writing as well as writing for the soul. Ampadu fits within this unit because she speaks on words that have significance for writing for the soul along the lines since there are mentions of the infusions of words like okra, gumbo, and jazz, or the ring plays like Little Sally Walker, or clapping plays like the Hambone that many sang on the playgrounds in the classrooms of their youth, which Impadu states on page 79. These are key usages of integration of words that have great cultural impact on the community. Royster fits within this unit because on page 37, she states a necessary aspect of self-affirmation not to feel compelled to choose one voice over another, not to claim one as more authentic, but rather to construct social realities that celebrate, acknowledge, and affirm differences, variety. Royster affirms that her voices are each individually important, which would transfer over into any of her writing. Rather than conforming to the standard dialect, she can speak or write for the soul. Sutherland Smith fits within this unit because the entire article is dealing with the ethicality of plagiarism and when it could be considered bad. It's questioning the entire structure that schools have on those policies. The DC Urban Debate League co-curricular fits within this unit because, ethically, it was not correct for the coaches to prepare the arguments for the novice debaters because it left them with nothing to understand or grasp but just words to read. The event questioned the ethicality of debating with notes that are not your own, and if it validates or invalidates the arguments, even if they were not presented correctly. The fourth unit covers moving beyond borders and social responsibilities during writing. Ampadu fits within this unit because she establishes a clear necessity to teach on the importance of bi-dialectalism to the African American community. On page 79, she writes, Richardson concluded that the use of African American language is helpful in teaching composition as it helps to develop a more well-rounded writer, while showing that the Black language usage is a worthwhile resource in educational enterprise. This is moving across borders because it is breaking the gap of what is normally taught in schools. Royster fits within this unit because on page 38, there is actual talk of how the community can stretch across borders in order to improve the understanding of the African American vernacular, when she writes, how can we teach, engage in research, write about, and talk across boundaries with others instead of for, about, and around them? Sutherland Smith fits within this unit because the concept of learned plagiarism expressed on page 95 shows how this article is moving over the borders that many have already placed in their heads about plagiarism, and it's connecting the disconnect in learning about plagiarism early on to bi-dialectalism in a way that those who speak Ebonics are raised on it and not necessarily taught that it's wrong, since it doesn't fit within the standard English rules. The co-curricular fits within this unit because debating is helping those novice debaters move beyond the borders of comfort with speaking publicly, as well as educating these middle schoolers on topics that they would not normally be informed on.
So what outside reading could possibly tie into all three of these works, along with the debate co-curricular? What is this mystery work? You guessed it, the Wonder Boy himself, Harry Potter. I know. It sounds crazy, but let's break things down and see how he falls into the unit categories. Interestingly enough, Harry has a different dialect of his own, known as Parseltongue, which we find out in the first book of the series, but we're not focusing on that today. We're focusing on the structuralism of the wizarding world in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. J.K. Rowling does quite an interesting parallelism to the real world with her writing by creating a classist and slightly racist society. This is first introduced through our convenient plot character, arch-nemesis Draco Malfoy. After getting a severe diss from Hermione Granger, he brings forth the insult on page 112.
You filthy little mudblood.
But wait.
What's a mudblood?
A mudblood became a name for someone with non-magical parents, intended to come more so across as a racial slur to impose wizard superiority.
There's some wizards, like the Malfoy family, who think they're better than everyone else because they're what people call pure blood.
Rowling even made a society of people who are practically wizard Nazis in order to emphasize the class issue. Well, how is this all relevant to Harry's Parseltongue abilities? It's all in the way that they're received. They are revealed in the 11th chapter during a dueling club meeting because a big bad basilisk decided to start terrorizing the school. After Lockhart gets humiliated by Snape in a dueling match, it's time for the students to participate. Who should our protagonist get paired up with, other than our wonderful plot bolsterer, Draco Malfoy? After a little bit of cheating, what should happen to fly out of his wand but a snake? The perfect expositional prop we need to reveal the key information about our hero. Good going, Draco! After Harry basically tells the snake to chill out, man, the snake backs away like, cool, bruh, after he was clearly gonna attack and potentially even kill Justin. Now, after saving Justin, Harry expects to be seen as a hero, but instead he's met with...
What are you playing at?
which is only to follow throughout the course of the book. This is where the first unit gets tied in. Inquiry and reflection come mainly into play in the book because of the impact of Harry's isolation due to his parcel tongue. J.K. also introduced a new form of reflection when she added the element of class systems and racial slurs. That establishes another precedent behind the magic world's general despise of parcel tongues. The second unit is seen writing in the discipline, aka magic in the discipline, from this scene because it's a display of Harry's Bi-Dialectalism being put to practice and how the discipline of wizardry views it. The third unit, ethically, in magic, people view Harry's gift as a bad thing on page 196. So he has to struggle with if he's going to use it or not, although it is allowing him to hear noises that are leading him to uncover the plot of the murderous basilisk and heir of Slytherin, as well as being able to save his classmates from the occasional garden snake. The fourth unit comes into Harry's decision-making process with this piece of magic. This is moving beyond borders because Harry is questioning the entire bias of negative opinions towards Parseltongues when he asks on page 196, "What does it matter how I did it as long as Justin doesn't have to join the headless hunt?" Which is trying to connect in his friend and the reader's eye the connection between the dialect and the good it can do. There were clear strengths of each work. Ampado gave solid, clear examples of how African American vernacular was being incorporated into regular American English, making a stunning case for how dialects and languages are always shifting, authenticating Ebonics. Royster made a great argument for the authenticity of using both dialects, which means that both serve a purpose in the community. Sutherland Smith gives a new outlook on plagiarism, with detailed explanations of several accounts of how it is learned. There's a multitude of evidence used to back up the claims. Rowling introduces the fear of Parseltongue, but also introduces classism and a form of racism that can pair up with the fear of and ideology that is placed in people's minds rather than just a random fear. The DC Urban Debate League helped many debaters break out of their shell in terms of public speaking and allowed students to research on topics and formulate opinions on real-world issues. There were also some areas that needed to be improved upon. For Ampadu, although examples are given of how African American vernacular is included, it is not expounded upon in any great detail of how this may be a change to the language for the better, which would have shed a great light on Ebonics. With Royster, the quotes did not always seem to belong where they were placed. In Sutherland Smith's work, there could have been a more solid laid-out plan for reversing the hold of plagiarism rather than just thrusting this information on us to form an opinion on without helping the reader or audience get at a solution. The DC Urban Debate League allowed for coaches to prepare the speeches of novice debaters, which did not prepare the debaters at all. And Rowling could have developed the shock in the scene of the reveal of Harry's gift better. She doesn't always go into detail on events and rather leaves things up to the imagination of the reader, which might make the impact fly over the head of some.
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets actually falls in line with all of the units as well. With all of this in mind, it would actually be pretty easy to swap in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for one of the course readings. If it had to be one, I'd swap out Bi-Dialectalism, The Linguistics of White Supremacy by James Sledd, because Harry Potter demonstrates the same class issues and difficulty with having another dialect and moving forward in his schooling career while utilizing it. Clearly, all of the works were able to overlap by fitting them into the similar units. I think that Rowling was clever in the end by making connections to the real world with such a fantasy realm. It allowed for there to be a connection to real-world issues in a text that can be reached across so many platforms that a message would eventually get through.